Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Patron Hangout number 100 and what is it? 93. Okay. I've had a rough few days, and so I'm going to be on a soapbox, but I'm going to hold my soapbox off till later in the show, so you can escape it if you want to. But it is going to be about Chris Watson's psychopathy, because I'm very, very frustrated over people's concept of psychopathy and the psychological world and their claptrap, in my opinion. And a lot of people buying into claptrap, and a lot of people buying into whatever is pushed on the internet, pushed by defense lawyers and all that, that they start buying into, I would say, psychological concepts or diagnoses or guesses that just don't actually match real life. But I'm going to save that soapbox. Really, I am. So anyway, welcome to the show. Thank you, everybody who is here in the chat room. If you would like to be in the chat room, please do click below on Patreon and join. It's $5 a month. I have 2 live shows a week, this hangout, and also a case show on the weekend. And you can be part of the community. It helps this educational channel. But if you don't want to do that, it's okay, because all of my shows are public, and you can see every one of them without being a patron. Just can't be part of the live part unless I do the rare live. Once in a while, I do a rare open live for a particular reason. But other than that, please do subscribe to the channel and definitely click the bell for notifications and check all the playlists for cases that you're interested in. And go to the search engine on YouTube and put in Profiler Pat Brown and the case you're interested in and see if I've already done it. So you can then view it. All right. I will try to control myself. I really will. Amy's here now. Welcome. What? I started without you? That is weird. Huh, no introduction. The introduction was here on this end, but can you hear me? You can't hear anything? Oh, for God's sake. Seriously? Okay, wait a minute. Can you hear me? That's what I want to know. Let me know, because there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to hear me. Oh, okay. Sometimes there is a weird thing where sometimes, for whatever reasons, the people who are here live actually do not hear the intro. But when you see the show later, the intro is there. I don't understand that. Wait a minute. What you can hear now? When did you start hearing me? When I welcomed you to the show, or did you hear me way later? That's what I want to know, because if the show's a mess, I'm going to restart it. So I do want to know that. Was I talking without sound for a while? Somebody let me know. Sounds fine. Okay. Missed the welcome. Missed the welcome. You mean the intro, or when I was saying hello to everybody? All right. That's cool. All right. No, let's not worry about it then. I don't need more trouble this week. No, for some reason, sometimes the intro does go missing for people who are at the live, and it never makes any sense to me. But don't worry about it. I don't think people even care if the live is there. I mean, the intro is there. Anyway. All right. Hi, Allison. You're here too. Okay. And I don't know if I said hello to Amy. Okay. Let's start with something pleasant before I go on. I know everybody always wants to know about the cat. I just thought this was a funny thing about my feral cat. You know, the one that comes in and eats now comes into my bedroom. He actually licks the food off my hand, steps into my lap to eat from the bowl. I get onto the floor, so he has to step onto my lap. But he does this funny thing, which I find very amusing. He comes into the room, and when I'm sitting, he comes in and I sit on the floor, and then he crouches down, and then he does this. He closes his eyes. I think he thinks he doesn't want me to see him. So he thinks if he closes his eyes and he can't see me, I can't see him. And it's really pretty funny, because he does that a lot. And he comes in and starts that way. And then when I look away, then his eyes open. Then he starts moving in to get the food. But I just think it's funny. So it's cute. But I'm like, dude, I'm still here. Just because you have your eyes closed doesn't mean I'm not in the room. So I think it's pretty funny. UK Royal Watchers now here too. Isn't that cat's show how the comfortable? No, not with him. I don't think so. I've been watching all his little behaviors. That's what I've been studying, his behaviors. No, I don't think he's comfortable. He does this. He specifically does this thing. He also does a fake grooming thing. Like people think, well, if he's grooming, he's comfortable. Now, if he eats food and then lays down on the ground and grooms, I'll believe that. But sometimes he'll do a fake grooming thing, again, to distract me from, like, he's not interested in me or the food. He does it, and it's very short. He does this little fakey thing, and then he moves in. So I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah, he doesn't trust me. Are you kidding me? He's getting closer to trusting me, but, he still hisses at me, and, and he, it doesn't stay in the room very long with me. He moves away. So anyway, it's fun to watch. But anyway, and as I said, I want to point out that this week has been a little stressful due to the show I just put up and the whole issue of psychopathy and Chris Watts, which seems to be a really weird thing with people, which again will be my soapbox later. But I was watching The Nanny. It was just for amusement, just because it's a relaxing show to watch. If you all remember The Nanny way back, I can't remember when it even came out. But Franny Fine's mother is over, and she's in a bad mood. So Fran comes out with the Hershey's syrup and a spoon, and there she is. She's pouring that syrup on the spoon and slurping it down because she's in a bad mood. But I think there's a problem with this particular part of the episode. I have an issue with it. Does anybody know what the issue I have with that is? Yes, Mac is a manipulator. You bet. He is. Hi, Clarissa. What's wrong with that picture of Franny Fine's mom pouring the Hershey syrup onto the spoon and eating it? What's wrong with that? Come on now, you have to profile this before I get into the serious stuff. Nobody can profile this? It's dead silent. Absolutely. You're right on the money, cauliflower. If she was really upset, she would just drink that straight from the bottle. That's what I would do. Open up the refrigerator door, pop that little top up and go. That's the way it's really done. No, it wasn't stereotyping. I just think she didn't. I think she should drink straight from the bottle. That's the way it's really done. Just pointing that out for you guys who do not know how to do that. That's so unladylike. Are you saying I'm not a lady? I have been called worse. Okay. If I had a bottle of Hershey's syrup I've been trying to eat properly this week, and I've been trying to eat properly for a while, and it's not working so well. But if I had a bottle of Hershey's syrup in there, I would have done that. And if I go over to my daughter's house, hopefully she's not watching. My granddaughter's next door, right? And they're not looking. Will I open up the refrigerator, find that Hershey's bottle, and go, yes, I will. I live by myself. I can do whatever. Yeah. I'm just hoping they don't have like cameras in their kitchen over there. So when I know I don't put my mouth on the bottle. I'm very good. I squirt it from a distance. Oh, so you're after my own heart. There you go. Okay. Enough of the humor stuff. Now we must get to other stuff. All right. I want to start with. Oh, I do want to mention this because I know some people are here for this, but I decided I'm going to do a separate video right after the show on this, and that would be the 2 missing kids in Nova Scotia. I was going to do it for the show, but because I'd like to talk a little bit further on it, I'm just going to do a separate little show on it. I know a lot of people who don't come to my Hangouts would like to hear about this, and they'll never see it if I don't put it as a separate show. It'll be a short piece, but it'll be separate. Just want to let you know. So it'll probably be out this evening, at least by 7 o'clock. So check it out when it does come out. So let's go to the Menendez Brothers. Ah, yes. Aren't they lovely? Just love the Menendez Brothers. Anyway, they are happy today. They are indeed happy. Why are they happy? Because they have succeeded in getting what they want, which is a resentencing. And let me Let me point this out. So the judge cuts the Menendez brothers' sentences, giving them a chance at freedom. Okay. Now, this again is probably part of my soapbox. Oh, what did it just do? They threw up oh, look, spring in Bermuda. That sounds good. An advertisement. Okay, so the judge cut their sentence, reduced the sentence of Eric and Lyle Menendez, making them eligible for parole more than 30 years after they killed their parents in a Beverly Hills mansion. He resentenced the brothers after hearing evidence from relatives and prison staffs about their attempts to make amends while behind bars. I don't think they can make amends to their parents. Their parents are dead. What kind of amends? So, okay, a little bit of my soapbox. That's 2 soapboxes, which I'm going to get into about the issue of forgiveness and amends. Somebody wrongs me. Let's say somebody burns my house down. And then they decide they're going to make amends by working for Habitat for Humanity, and they're going to help build houses for poor people. Hello, I'm over here. My house is still burned down. What did you do for me? A lot of times there's this concept where if you're going to make amends, and there's a kind of a program for that where supposedly a person who has committed a crime against a certain person, as long as it wasn't something like rape, you can't make amends for rape. Sorry, I don't care what you say. And I don't think you make amends for murder either. You can make amends for, like, I stole your car and crashed it. I think you should, first of all, you stole it, so you should go to jail. Secondly, you should then have to repay those people for the car you stole. Do some type of thing. So you can make amends directly to a person if you actually do something for them. But you can't make amends to a person by doing something for somebody else in their name, what they didn't even ask for. It's what, let's say you say, okay, I want to pay you back for the vase I broke, which is worth $300. And they go, look, I don't really need that vase back. You probably can't find a replacement for it. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to give $300 to these poor children organization. And you do that because they asked you to. That's fine. But if you can't just say, oh, sorry, I broke your vase. I gave $50 to a poor children's organization to make amends. Was that an organization I wanted you to give money to? You didn't ask me? No, get out of here. So amends either go directly to the person or in their name with their blessing and request. That is my personal point of view. So they can't make amends in prison to their dead parents. They deprived their parents of life. So you don't make amends in prison. You can behave properly in prison. You can do volunteer work in prison, but that doesn't mean you're making amends in any way, shape, or form. So this is just garbage. It pisses me off. Now, the other thing I want to point out is with psychopathy, there are quite a few psychopaths in prison who, first of all, find God, find Allah, find Jesus, whatever they find there. And they also become artists, write books, and they do good things, volunteer work in prison. Does that make them not a psychopath? And does that really make up for what they did? No. What happens is you're bored off your butt. You're sitting in that prison cell. You are bored. I mean, if I were in there, I'd probably find a bunch of things to do too. You know what I mean? Oh, I can go to a therapy session? Sure, why not? I can chit chat with somebody. Yeah, sure. Oh, I can help over here? Sure, because otherwise I'm going to be sitting in my cell bored out of my mind. So yes, they can do things. It doesn't prove they've changed. This is this weird concept that they are different people because in prison they act differently. Serial killers are really, for the most part, great people in prison. They make friends with it. They make friends with the guards, because they always were kind of like, police oriented, like they always wanted to be a cop but never could be one because they couldn't pass a psych test. But now they can hang out with the guards and they're friendly and chatty and all that stuff. They can talk to FBI profilers. They can write books. They can do all that stuff too. They don't kill people while they're in prison because that's not a place they can commit the crime. So the Menendez brothers committed the crime they wanted to commit at the time, which was to off their parents, get all their money and not be under their control, regardless of their claims of, oh, the reason we did it was we thought they were going to kill us, sexual abuse, blah, blah, blah. They committed an absolutely premeditated, gruesome, horrible crime, and they can never make amends to their parents. Now, as far as the family goes, if the family wants them to get out, is that a good reason? There's a lot of people who will say, oh, we forgive them. We understand, because this is a new world. And this is what I'll talk about in my later soapbox. We have a new world that gives excuses to everybody for their bad behavior, that we should never condemn anybody because they suffered in their life and therefore they lost control and couldn't help themselves, and we blame everybody else. Everybody else has victimized them. That's why they committed their crime. This is the new thing that we're going down these days. And I don't know whether it has to do with a lot of pseudo-psychology stuff, which comes from the psychologist, in my opinion, or it comes from the internet, all these YouTube channels, just all the Innocence Project stuff, just praising these people who are actually guilty. I don't know where it's coming from. It's like a psychosis across the public, where suddenly we feel sorry for people who commit horrific crimes and want to always find a way to forgive them and excuse them. And it's concerning. And I sent this very interesting thing on that issue. This guy, unbelievable. He was killed in a road rage. I want to see who sent this to me. I don't know. Maybe I should mention who did. But anyway, one of my patrons, thank you very much. He was killed in a road rage incident, and his family used AI to bring him to the courtroom to address his killer. Stacey Wales spent 2 years working on the victim impact statement she planned to give the court after her brother was shot to death in 2021 road rage incident. But even after all that time, Wales felt her statement wouldn't be enough to capture her brother Christopher Pelkey's humanity and what he would have wanted to say. So Wales decided to let Pelkey give the statement himself with the help of artificial intelligence. And here is the dead guy. Oh my God. Here is the dead guy coming to life with AI to forgive his killer in horrifying video. You're damn straight that's horrifying. And the judge is like, that's wonderful. The judge, who needs to be disbarred because he allowed testimony from a dead guy, which wasn't his own testimony. His sister wrote a script for her dead brother to say. I think because her sister may have a narcissistic personality disorder, she wants to be the forgiving one. She wants to pretend whatever she wants to pretend. You have no right to say what your brother would say. Even if you believe he would have said that, how dare you? How dare you? If my kids bring me back to life to have me talk about something, I am not going to be happy. I am absolutely not. You do not speak for me ever in my life or death. So don't be saying after I get murdered by one of my stalkers, well, I know Pat Brown understands that certain people are pushed over the edge, and she realizes she might have said something on her show. Get out of here. I know. Now, maybe the sister does know her brother, but so what? It's disgusting and despicable. And you can, I'll hopefully remember to link it. By the way, if I forget to link things, please tell me in the comments, because I forget this all the time. Because after I do a whole show, by the time I put it up, I forget what I said I'd link. This is on the Matt Walsh show. I know Matt Walsh is very political, so please, let's not get into politics on this show. But he did do this. He was horrified, as you can see by his look. And that this would be used in a court of law and that the judge would permit this garbage. And he did go on, which I thought was interesting, because I've spoken here about the issue of what is basically faux forgiveness, that a lot of people think they need to forgive. Even serial killers who rape and murder their child. I forgive you. Get out of here. How can you forgive them? And people say, well, that's to give yourself peace. No, that's not what forgiveness is supposed to be about. Forgiveness is when somebody comes to you and says, I'm sorry for what I did to you. I want to make amends. And they do make amends, and then you forgive them for what they did. Now, it doesn't mean you wholly trust them or everything else in the future, but at least they have come to you for your forgiveness and they've made amends. And usually it's something you can forgive them for. Somebody takes something from my home, steal something, and they come back and say, I shouldn't have done this. I saw it, caught my eye, and I should have resisted, and I didn't. And so I'm bringing it back to you, and I really apologize. I want to, let's say, do something for you. I want to help. I do want to do something nice to make for what I did to you. Now, do I trust them in my house as far as my stuff goes in the future? Maybe not, but I would forgive them. There's a lot of things you can forgive people for. Raping and murdering your daughter? No. That forgiveness, I will leave that up to a higher power, not me, because that higher power is the only one going to know anything about whether that person really deserves forgiveness, or we just don't know what's really in the killer's mind to even that he has any remorse or anything about what's going on. What you can do, and I've said this over and over again, is you can accept. Accepting is fine. I can accept that this person who is a psychopath and deranged and evil or whatever killed my daughter. It's a horrible thing. I'll never get over it. I can accept it happened. Or I can accept that I ended up divorced because of infidelity. I can accept that. I don't forgive it, but I can accept it. Acceptance gives you peace because you realize that a snake might be a snake, and you don't have to fight it being a snake anymore. You don't have to pretend it's something it isn't. You just say, okay, I accept that this happened. Like a bad thing happened to me, and sometimes bad things happen to decent people. That's the way it is. But I don't have to forgive unless forgiveness is deserved. So Matt Walsh goes into a whole thing about faux forgiveness, which I think is interesting. He's thinking a lot of times people say it just because I think they have to say it these days. Like, in other words, they're a bad person if they won't say they forgive. So this whole thing is crazy, and it shouldn't have been allowed in court, but it's fascinating. So, and then I'm going to go back to the Menendez brothers now. This is correct. This is the point about the Menendez brothers I'm about to make, because they supposedly have now shown a thing called remorse. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. No, they cannot make it. She can say how it impacted her life. But, well, we know how it impacted his life. He's dead. He doesn't have a life on this planet at this point in time. She does. How is it? He cannot give an impact statement. It's insanity. That was very likely impacted his sentencing. They can say whatever they want, but dead people cannot speak. To allow her to write a script for her brother and have it AI'd is disgusting. That should have been blocked out of the court. That judge is repulsive. Repulsive. Okay, let me go to the remorse of the Menendez brothers. All right, so they were resentenced. The district attorney had argued they were not rehabilitated, but now the parole board will consider the possibility they could be released as early as next month. So now let's talk about, they made an emotional statement to the court. They went through the grim details of the brutal slayings and their decision to reload their shotguns and keep shooting at their parents at point blank range in the living room. The siblings were aged 18 and 21 at the time. I had to stop being selfish and immature to really understand what my parents went through at those last moments, Eric Menendez, 54, told the court. He described the shock, confusion, and betrayal they must have felt seeing their sons holding guns and opening fire. Both apologized for their actions and talked about their hopes of working with sex abuse victims and helping those incarcerated if they were given a second chance outside. The voice of Lyle Menendez, 57, cracked as he talked about his unfathomable actions on his relatives. I lied to you and forced you into a spotlight, a public humiliation, he said to his family. Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman said the decision to resentence the pair was monumental and carried significant implications for the families involved. So they showed remorse and understanding of their crimes. Get out of here. You know how long they've been in prison and how many defense attorneys and how many psychologists they've talked to who have told them, this is what you need to say if you want to get out. They're playing a script. You talk about the script of the dead guy. This is a script written for them by defense attorneys. Nobody in their right mind has any idea whether they have a shred of remorse or not. Just because they say they feel bad about it doesn't mean they do. Doesn't mean they take real, true responsibility. Doesn't mean anything. It's a crock. And to have people say, oh, well, now they're saying the right word. I can tell you all kinds of things. Are you going to believe me just because I say these things? I'm trying to think of something I should tell you right now. I'm in dreadful need of money right now. And if I don't get that money, well, I haven't let you know that I'm struggling with a severe mental disorder of severe depression and blah, 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 blah. Oh, I shouldn't have put blah, 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 blah. And please, can you send me money? I can say anything. It doesn't mean it's true. And if people are psychopathic, they're even better. And if they have a defense attorney who may be psychopathic too, you got 2 psychopaths or 3 psychopaths working together to come up with a really good script. Just annoys the heck out of me, because we should be by this time aware enough to understand how this works. And yet the whole game is played out over and over again, and people cheering, oh my goodness, it's wonderful. Oh. Yee. Well, yes, if they had empathy with their parents, they wouldn't have killed them. Well, of course, they claim they had been sexually abused by the father, and the mommy just stood by and let it happen. There's never been great proof of that. Now, there's been that one letter issue, and I'm not saying there couldn't have been, but again, the law says you cannot blow away people because they did something to you years ago. This, or even an hour ago. There's a thing called self-defense, and everything else after self-defense is murder. That's what it is, because you had a chance to walk away. You have a chance to, and they were adults. So this is garbage. Only person I'll give a small break to is Gypsy Rose. Blanchard? What is her new name now? Anyway, I will give her a break only because she was a victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy for an entire life growing up. She was kept imprisoned. She was tortured. She was manipulated. And when she became an adult, she did not know how she could possibly get away from the woman who was a psychopath, who was controlling her and had told everybody she wasn't capable of living on her own. So even if she ran away, she could be brought back into her custody. I get why she did what she did. Nick, on the other hand, her little boyfriend, that the internet boyfriend who had fantasies about raping and killing women, I have zero for him. You know what I mean? That guy is not the whole stupid autistic thing. That guy also honed in on a person who has been victimized all her life and manipulated her as well. And he committed the actual crime. He deserves to be in prison where he is. Does Gypsy have some issues? Sure she does. After living like that, she does. But I can understand a little more because she was in captivity. Even as an adult, she was in captivity. The Menendez brothers were not. So that's just, yeah. Well, I don't know if you're talking about her. She's. I wrote a letter that, hey, you need to stay off of TV, but she's been suckered in by all the fame, so probably won't be helpful. What? What's GPSCT? What is that? I don't know what that even is. Want to give me another spelling of that, because I have no idea what you're talking about. And if it's by the way, just people tell me to watch lots of documentaries which I think of garbage. They're manipulative. They present a certain point of view as if you think that that's going to somehow influence me to change my mind. And I've watched, and this is what my soapbox is going to be on later. I have people who try to school me in what I should understand, as if I haven't been in the field for 20 freaking years and I haven't read everything and seen a magnitude of stuff with a background of understanding this kind of thing. They think, oh, this documentary shows that this person is this way. It's not true. But if you are unfamiliar with the criminal mind, if you're unfamiliar with psychology, and I mean the psychology is not promoted by a lot of, unfortunately, say a lot of psychobabble from the psychologists themselves, which I almost consider a cult these days. Logic and stuff like that. A lot of times that's when people tell me to do that, I'm like, yes. Think about it. With her, think about it. She's been in prison. She's come out. The networks are all over. They're offering her a ton of money, and people are fawning over her. She's got boyfriends coming, and she had more than one boyfriend who are questionable people for hooking up with a person in prison. And she spent her life in the limelight in a very demented way, and almost like the Stockholm syndrome thing. I think she's still got Stockholm syndrome. Now the Stockholm syndrome is from the media. It's very powerful. People don't understand the power of the media and being on television and being a celebrity. And I used this story before, but I remember this once. I went to do Montel Williams, and there were some people there. Now, when I do Montel Williams, I was coming in as a professional. So for me, I'm just doing my job, right? But these people were like, they came in. They were parents of a murder victim. I think daughter was murdered or something. And they came in from some small town somewhere. They were flown in. They were put up in a hotel in New York City. They actually, it looked like they were on vacation. They were so excited. And then they were brought into, because I sat next to it, brought into makeup. And now, mind you, these people were, if you looked at them, some people would say, oh, trailer park. I'm only saying that because that's the way people would view them. When they got finished with hair and makeup, they looked like stars. They looked like celebrities. They looked gorgeous. So they fixed them up. And I mean, they fixed me up too. I look a hell of a lot better on national television when I get hair and makeup than I do right here. This is more real, except for that filter. I cheat a little bit. Anyway, so they were like giddy. They're giddy. They're like, oh my God, look at the way I look. We're in New York. We're going on my television. Your daughter was raped and murdered. What the hell are you so excited about? Then they got on the show, and when Montel started talking to them, and he brought their minds back to the actual subject matter of their kid that was murdered by a serial killer, they absolutely fell apart. And they went from one complete state of mind to another, just completely fell apart, because that was their real life, and that was their true love, and their child. And they fell apart. But the glamour of television is very empowering to people. It's just overwhelming. No, most people in their lives never get to be on the Montel Williams show, or any other show. Some people are super excited by just being on the local news. If some local news person says, so what do you think about the fire down the street? And they're like, oh my God, did you see me? I was on the and they didn't know a damn thing except there was a fire down the street. It's glamorous, the glamour of it, and the way the producers treat you, which is just to butter you up constantly. And in my case, it wasn't quite the same way it's going to be with her, because they're going to throw money at her, like mega money, to have that reality show with her. And then she's going to have people just praising her constantly on television. She's been able to get plastic surgery, which quite frankly is one time I say she really did need it. And she looks way better than she used to. If I were in her position, would I say no? Now, I encourage her to say no, but she's like, I can go back and live with my parents or not my parents, but I forgot who she was going to go live with. Some relatives. I can go back and live with them in a little town, and I can do what? Or I could be a huge celebrity. I made my recommendation. I knew she wouldn't take it, because I don't know if I would if I were in a position, I am going to look at that. I want to look at that, because I may do a show on that one. Let me see. I don't. Yeah. Is it? Yeah. I'm not sure if it's an abbreviation or some this, when we all type, I don't know what the heck it is. So you got to tell me what that actually is, the GPSC, because I honestly don't know, but I will watch the Netflix one. Oh, so that's why I guess just stop on the Menendez brothers. I don't believe the remorseful statements. Sorry, don't believe. All right. I want to go on. I want to talk about Lawyer Lee. Okay, Lawyer Lee, I do try occasionally to be very open and recommend other YouTube channels when I feel like they have something to offer, maybe something very different from myself, but at least something to offer to consider. I don't mind people, and I'll get on that soapbox later, that disagree with me. It's how they do it, and do they do it with respect? And I don't disagree. I mean, I may disagree with somebody who has a differing opinion on a trial or whatever, but that they're saying things in a way that at least they're explaining things, and you can then get a differing opinion. So Lawyer Lee, during the Delphi trial, she definitely was being a defense attorney, shall we say, to Richard Allen on television. So she was very like, maybe Richard Allen's not guilty. Maybe this is it. Now, the Delphi case is to some extent tricky, not because there was a big, huge conspiracy and not because the Odinists came in and all that nonsense, but just because the physical evidence was very limited in the Richard Allen case. He did confess over and over again, but people could wonder whether he lost his damn mind. The bullet they found, it did match the kind of bullets he had, but it wasn't it wasn't proven to be his. It was just proven to be like his. He was right where he would have been when this went down. Do I think he's guilty? Yes, I do. But do I understand why Lawyer Lee could, at least in this particular case, present to people an alternative? Just let's look at this. Is this valid evidence? Is this enough to convict him? So during that case, I recommended her because I was like, okay, she's explaining where you could come up with some different looks at this. You can see the defense side of it. I don't have a problem with it, because sometimes defense attorneys actually defend innocent people. Oh my God, yes, it does happen. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and that's the whole point of having a system, not a jury system, because I'll go with professional jury system, but anyway, a system which supposedly has a trial where you have an opportunity to present, that your defense has a chance to present evidence and to go against the prosecution, to say the prosecution case is not acceptable, not strong enough, and we can't put this person in prison based on this stuff that the prosecution has come up with. That's the way the system works, and it should work that way. So Lawyer Lee, at that point in time, I was like, oh, okay. However, I've been a little upset recently because Lawyer Lee has come out on 2 cases, totally to the defense side, and she's saying she's gone conspiracy route on both of them, and I'm quite frankly like kind of appalled. She is Luigi Mangione. She's going for maybe all the evidence could have been planted. It wasn't him. He's a patsy. Excuse me. But people think Mangione is a patsy. If you're going to get a patsy, what you're not going to pick is a wealthy, a very wealthy guy who can afford a defense, first of all, and has a family who has a lot of money, a highly educated man. You're just going to pick this guy out of all the people you could pick. You're just going to, how did they pick him? I mean, just accidentally picked him. No, there's a ton of evidence why he has been arrested and charged with this crime. There's a lot of evidence. And of course, people go and they look at photos and say, look, the eyebrows on that guy isn't the same, and blah, 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 because people don't understand photography and lighting and all that stuff. But if they're going to pick somebody, pick a freaking loser who's just in the neighborhood, some whatever. But you don't pick this guy unless there's a reason to. pick him because he is linked to the crime in many ways. And that is what Mangione is. So she's going on this conspiracy thing. And it really bugs me when she is not his lawyer. Lawyer Lee, if you're going to present cases, you should, even though you're a defense lawyer, you should be presenting to the public reasonable stuff. And you shouldn't be taking the defense in every single case you're going to talk about, because you're a lawyer, not just a defense lawyer. You're a lawyer, so you could see the prosecution side sometimes. You could see where the evidence does point to the guy sometimes. She's also gone off on the Karen Reed case, as the Karen Reed case is a conspiracy. And I'm like, seriously, you have to know, Lawyer Lee, there's no big conspiracy. That there's not 20 or 30 people all involved in covering everything up to pin the death of this man, this police officer, on his girlfriend. And they did all these things to pin it on her. They manipulated all the evidence. She's going on like that. She's playing into everybody, all the conspiracy theory crap. So sorry, Lawyer Lee, I used to like you when, even though you were pointing out stuff in favor of Richard Allen, it was reasonable then. But what you're doing now, I don't appreciate and I don't approve of. So personally, that's the end of my recommending your channel. And I really love to recommend channels where I think at least people get something out of it that's not outrageous. But I think she's crossed the line. And now I begin to wonder, is she just doing that because everybody likes the people who love conspiracy theories and everybody is innocent? She's probably going to say Scott Peterson is innocent next. Who else are you going to say is innocent? Or even if you're not saying they're innocent, you keep putting out all the evidence or information that causes these conspiracy people theories to click on your channel and hover around you and make you a frick load of money. So I'm just disappointed, really am disappointed, because I thought I found somebody who I was like, okay, defense attorney, I can maybe appreciate. Not so much anymore. So very annoyed. Karen Reed is guilty. Whether she'll be found guilty by this second trial, I don't know, but it's evidence in her case is overwhelming. And so when people say, how can you say she's guilty when you haven't seen every bit of the trial? Okay, I've seen all the evidence, and I will state that there is no way he entered that house. She's not telling the truth. There's no way he entered the house and then he was murdered for some stupid reason in the house, and then they tossed his body right on the front lawn. There's none of this stuff is even credible in the smallest amount. Her stories, her claims, none of it's credible. In my opinion, this is a case where I can say, I would say all the evidence points to her guilt. I'll use the word points. Same thing with Brian Kohberger. All the evidence points to his guilt at this point in time. Now it has to be proven in a court of law. But for all you people that think this guy's another patsy, it is ridiculous. Now, could the police be wrong? Sure. Sometimes the police are wrong. The guy's like, everything points to the guy and it turns out not to be him. It's possible, but they're not making him a patsy. There's a reason that Brian Kohberger, they went after him, not just because they wanted to solve the case, which sometimes does happen. I'm not going to say it never happens. I believe me, you have to know that I have spoken up publicly against certain police departments, like the sheriff in South Carolina. Yes, you, Sheriff Wright. When you pinned, or shall we say, got a patsy and Kohberger. I'm sorry, not Kohberger. Sorry, I forgot his name. I should know it. This is one of my big cases. Todd, whatever his name is. Why have I blanked? It was like I blank all the time on these things. Too many names in my head. And this is a case I worked on. So Todd, what is your name? Superbikes. I got to look it up now. That's Kolep. That's why Kohberger Kolep. That's why I went to Todd Kolep, who's a serial killer. The crime of the Superbikes, mass murder. 4 people have mass murdered in a bike shop. Sheriff Wright got him to confess to that, and he gave a completely phony confession, and Wright lied about everything, and lied about the evidence, and now he's under they're doing an investigation into him. So as being a crooked guy, which he is. And I hope one day they'll pull that whole Todd Kohlhepp thing out and say, hey, it's clear the guy didn't really confess to the crime and knew nothing about the crime. He didn't do it. And even though he's a serial killer and is where he belongs in prison, he didn't commit the mass murder. So I will speak out about those things if I see it true, but I just will not go along with this conspiracy theory stuff when it's not true. And it just drives me crazy. And when people do that and they should know better, I question their ethics. So I'm not going to put that forward because I don't know what you're saying. Yeah, I don't want to get into the whole Karen Reed thing here. I'll state it again. If you're believing that Karen Reed is innocent, I don't know what your brain is at. Not everybody is perfect. People aren't perfect. Karen Reed isn't a perfect person. The people in the house weren't perfect people. They were all drinking. This is all true. But if you can't understand that the evidence is real, is what it is, and that there isn't a conspiracy of 10 to 20 people. This is kind of nonsensical stuff that everybody, the EMTs, the police, every single person the medical examiner, everybody's lying. And everybody's planting evidence and all. This is just stuff. You got to stop watching those channels. Seriously. You got to stop watching the nonsense channels. And that's what I'm going to get to also with the same thing. When we get down to Chris Watts and everybody who is hating on Chris Watts' wife, Shanann, hating on his girlfriend. Oh, they made him do it. The bitches made him do it. This stuff is nonsense. I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know if you're on all those channels that are hater channels and grifter channels. I don't even care if you went and looked at some evidence from the trial or whatever you're looking at. A lot of stuff is presented is simply not true. And if you got to stay away from these kind of channels because they are very addictive to people. People like to hate and get angry and say, oh, that person, stop it. Stop it. It's a waste of your damn life, first of all. It really is. You pick a few channels that has some merit, pick a few. And only watch those and spend the rest of your life doing something outside of the internet. And I include my own channel in that. Now, I hope if you're going to pick 3 channels, I hope mine's one of them. But don't sit there and watch 10 hours worth of crap and sit there and go to some scuzzbag grifter channel every day and watch 3 hours every freaking day of them trashing somebody or claiming something that, about some crime that isn't even true. Please stop doing that. Check out your own mental health. Really, if you're over there with Turtle Boy, who absolutely represents psychopathy, 100%, is a nasty piece of work, vicious, horrible human being. You're over there thinking Turtle Boy is some kind of, I don't know, hero. You better check out your own mental health. It's serious. I say this kind of stuff just begins to drive me absolutely freaking insane. Have you seen the Sandra Birchmore? Oh, no, I'm trying to remember now. Are we talking? I think I know what you're talking about. Now, that's a bit of a different case. Are we talking about the woman who was... I think I know which one you're talking about. There is a lot of... there is some issues in that case, which are realistic issues, but it's also a very convoluted. One of these days, I'll do a show on that. So, but the Karen Reed thing is quite actually very basic, very, very clear. All right. So anyway, I told you this is going to be a soapbox day. I have so many things that have irritated me today. What is that? Hold on a second. What am I looking at here? Okay, I'm going to skip that because I'm not going to do that today. All right. Just a couple things before I get into the other soapbox. This poor little kid, this is called OK Boy, and he is the son of these TikTokers. And they just had this accident where, as they say, the truck they were in ran off the road, crashed into a tree, and the little boy died. Parents survived. The girl wasn't with them. And so trying to find Hang on that. Okay. So this is a TikTok star. The baby is a TikTok star. And I just want to point out something here because I do have it's like 10 soapboxes in one day. I'm in a mood. I wish I had a Hershey syrup to drink. I swear to God, I wish I. Anyway, get your kids off of TikTok. All the people have YouTube channels and TikTok channels where they are focusing on their entire family life and their children are in every single episode. You are taking away your child's childhood. You are putting their entire life into the massive public view. I think it's sick. I think you're a narcissist. I think you need to stop it. Now, it's one thing if you have your Facebook page for your friends, and your kid does a concert or does something funny, and you put that on your page, on your Facebook page to your friends. Everybody wants to share things. I love it when my daughter puts stuff on her page, and I watch her go over to the page because I want to see, the fun things her family is doing, even though they live next door. But sometimes she goes on a trip with, let's say she went to Italy without me, but took, her husband, my daughter, and my granddaughter went to Italy. And of course, I want to see what they're doing. So I go on Facebook, and she puts up the different pictures and things that they're doing in Italy. Well, that's fine. But when you use your children and put them on a daily basis, everything that they ever say and do, oh, yes, it's so cute. But some people even do more reality show stuff where they get in arguments with their kids and all this kind of stuff. It's sick. And I don't know why everybody's watching it, because people's lives with their children are none of your damn business. And you're watching it like some sick reality show, again, on a daily basis, constantly. What are they going to do now? Pay attention to your own grandkids, your own kids. Keep out of other people's kids' lives. Yes, it's some things are cute. I'm not going to say they're not, but those children shouldn't be exposed to the public the way they're being exposed to the public. And when they're not choosing it. They are not choosing to be on television, or TikTok or Facebook Live or YouTube. They're not choosing it. When they get to be older, they can look back and say to their own parents, why did you use me constantly to make money? Why did you everything about me is out there for the whole damn world to know. Everything I've ever done, I pooped in my pants, that's out there. I said something stupid, it's out there. You used me. Kind of like Gypsy Rose. Her mother used her. So I'm thinking most of these parents who are doing this, putting their kids constantly on there, sorry, you got some problems. And I'm not in favor of it. So anyway, these people who use their children, especially the little boy, they're so cute, making lots of money off them. They're now investigating the death of 2-year-old OK Baby TikTok star Preston Ordone. Now, what are they looking at? He died on April 27th. And interesting, I don't understand why we don't know more about this accident. In a single vehicle car crash. All right, so they were in the car with their son at the time of their accident. This was during the day. Their 7-year-old daughter, Paisley, was at school and not in the vehicle. We don't know all the details yet. It's been a month, still don't know the details. The only reason I'm bringing up is I'm curious about this, a couple things. Their truck veered to the right off the interstate and struck a tree. I love it when they say the truck veered. The truck did not do that on its own. Somebody was driving the truck, and apparently it was supposedly the father driving the truck. I don't know if that's true or not, because I looked everywhere and only found one place somebody said it was a father. Somebody's driving the truck. And if that truck veered off the road and crashed into a tree apparently about the time it hit the tree, it was about 60 miles an hour. Why? It was during the day, so it's not like it was 2:00 in the morning, they're coming back from a party or anything. So I'm not suggesting that they were under the influence. But what were they doing? What happened at that moment? Now, both of them say they don't remember, because when they got the crash was, hit their head. Actually, the mother suffered more issues with a head injury. The husband, the father of the little boy, apparently had a broken leg or something. But she says they don't remember what happened. Okay. I would like to know the police report. Were there skid marks? Was there any reason? Did anybody see this happen? Why would they go off the road at that point? Was that person speeding and lost control of the vehicle? Were they looking at their phone? I mean, theoretically, a deer could have raced out and then they tried to swerve and it went into a tree, but they don't remember anything. And I want to know what the heck. It was a single car accident. There's no one else to blame but themselves. Sorry to tell you this, but you were in control of the car unless it was a deer, something that forced you off the road in a flash second, then it was your fault you hit the tree. And I can't quite understand what's going on with that. But anyway, what's interesting is that he was in the little boy was in a car seat. But when they looked at this crash, supposedly they reported that the driver of the vehicle and the front passenger were both properly restrained and sustained serious injuries. However, they reported that Preston was seated in the rear but improperly restrained in a child safety seat. They're also doing routine toxicology of the driver. And I don't know what else they know from the scene. It's been a month now, haven't seen anything. However, what's interesting to me is what came out after this. Okay, so the mom shares an update. And what she says is, for those of you who don't know, my husband and I suffered severe concussion and have no memory of the accident. How convenient. There has been a lot of misinformation out there, and we want to share the most accurate information we have at this time. We hired an independent accident reconstruction expert to thoroughly review the accident, which is okay. I agree with that. According to the vehicle's black box, the vehicle was traveling at 70 miles per hour before decelerating and making a right turn, impacting at approximately 60 miles an hour. Okay. If the guys reviewed the accident, why was it going 70 miles an hour? Why did it decelerate to 60? Why did it lose control and hit a tree? The truck didn't lose control. The driver lost control and hit a tree. Why are you not upfront about that? Then it says here, Preston remained fully restrained in his seat, as stated by witnesses, whoever those witnesses are. Throughout the incident, he was removed from the vehicle, still securely fastened and brought to the side of the road by bystanders. This occurred before any emergency personnel arrived. Witnesses shared that it appeared to take at least 15 minutes for the first responders to arrive, at which point Preston was still fully secured in his car seat and was handed over to them. The report confirms that the car seat base was properly installed and belted in. However, there appears to be an issue with how the seat attached to the base. The locking pins were stuck in the engaged position, which may have prevented the seat from fully securing to the base. And now they're, of course, probably planning on a lawsuit against the car seat company, which is what I'm pretty sure. So the police have said that's not true. Somebody's not telling the truth here, and I still want to know why the car left the road. And I don't see any information on that, which I think, again, the truck left the road. No, it didn't. The person driving the truck lost control of the vehicle. Two things possible. The driver of the truck lost control of the vehicle, and because they were speeding, took the turn too fast or whatever, lost control and ran to a tree. Or, no, three possibilities. Or something distracted the driver, looking at the phone, yelling at yelling at the baby is probably kind of worthless. Having an argument, whatever. Lost and was not paying attention and lost control of the vehicle and went to a tree. Third, possible suicide. And that's also something that can, if there's the person just simply drove off the road and drove into a tree because they were angry and said, okay, screw it all, we're all going to die today. Boom. These are the things the police have to investigate, regardless of the sadness of the whole thing. But people have been asking what really happened, and I don't know what really happened. It's horrible. The poor little 2-year-old lost his life, and if it was some freak thing that deer ran across the road, and then I feel dreadfully sorry. I would like to know if the child was belted in properly. However, I will say this. There are times when people put a kid in a car seat. They don't mean to be sloppy about it, but they are, and something goes wrong, and the kid, sometimes it's just bad luck. I mean, we're not perfect people either. We don't always, sometimes you think you did it properly and you didn't do it properly. So I personally think if the child was in the car seat and the car seat was facing backwards, I mean, I'm not going to fault them on that, really. I don't think so. I don't think anybody, I don't fault them on that. But I do, my problem is that they are ignoring the fact that that the driver, whichever it was, drove the car off the road into a tree. That's the problem. If they would talk about that and then talk about the other, I wouldn't have a problem. Because the reason the child died is because the truck hit a tree. That's the reason, not so much just the car seat, but the car hit a tree. I mean, the truck hit a tree because somebody drove the truck into a tree. So just so everybody, some people are like, but I you know, again, I don't want anybody to ever lose a child. I think it's horrific, but I also don't want people to keep using children on these shows. It just kind of upsets me. Yeah, this is the problem. Why does mom, she had a head injury, she might be not knowing what happened, but if he did, especially if the father was driving, he should know what happened. So yeah, it's a little I mean, you could be in shock and all that crap, but I'm still waiting to get the accident report. I just don't quite understand it. But when I hear that the truck veered into a tree as if the truck did it on its own, that bothers me, because it's avoiding what actually happened. If she had said, look, when we were driving home, both of us have no memory of why the truck, why, or, you know, let's say the husband was driving, why he doesn't have any memory of why he drove the truck off the road into the tree. He doesn't know if he, you know, this or happened, whatever happened, he doesn't know. But just to keep blaming it on the truck, like the truck just magically went into the tree, kind of bothers me. Still making money. I don't know if I see that that's exactly true. Again, one of the things we have to look at is the issue of fame. If you have a channel where you've been pumping, you know, putting the kid on there all the time, making lots of money, and you're all involved in all the fame stuff that you're involved in, all the money that's rolling in, all the people that are all excited about you, and all the compliments, oh, he's so cute, you know, you get that constantly. Well, if you do that kind of show, not my kind of show, I suffer a lot of negative stuff too. But generally speaking, those people get lots of positive stuff, and they get addicted to the fame, and they also get addicted to the fact that those are all these people waiting for information. You know, they're part of that whole thing. So that they would go online and say, hey, this is what happened. Here's what we're dealing with. Can you pray for us? Blah, blah, blah. That doesn't bother me. I think it would be odd, actually, you know, because they're so involved in that. Now, should they do it all privately, just disappear? One could say that, but I understand at that point why they do it. I just don't like children being used like this. I just think it's I don't know, I'm bothered by the fact that their entire life is about filming their children and everything that they do and putting it on the internet constantly. I just think that's inappropriate. It's not the way you raise a child. You know, your child should not be just entertainment for the entire freaking world. I don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. So that bothers me. But anyway, that's just speaking of being out to the world here. This woman, Valeria Marquez, she's Mexican. She this is just what happens when you're looking hot like she does. She's a very attractive woman. I've seen her in a bunch of different things. She's very attractive and very girly and all that stuff. And she has 200,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram. And she was in, I don't know, some kind of nail parlor thing. And she was holding on to a little stuffed animal. And she was doing her show. A guy walked in and killed her. They don't know yet who killed her. Whether it was stalker, maybe. It could be somebody she pissed off. I don't really know. For some reason, this won't come up. What happened to it? But it does go to show you, you know, the dangers of being online, which they just are dangers, especially when you're attractive, shall we say, super young and attractive. When you're on TV all the time, you become a target for a lot of people who become just obsessed, shall we say, and they don't know yet who did it. I'm trying to find what happened to my thing on this. It vanished. Okay, it went away. So anyway, that's who that was. It's just very sad because, you know, that's what happens when you become a put yourself out there like that. And you're also very public in where you are, that people know your location. You're hanging out in these public places doing your YouTube stuff, whether you're at the gym doing that stuff where you're really annoying, or you go into a gym and you have to show off your body, and other people in the gym are just trying to work out, and here you are with your camera person like, hey, which I think should be banned from all gyms. That's not a place. You can have your own home gym if you want to do that nonsense. But they do this, a lot of times they're in parks, and they just ask people to get out of their way because they're filming. So a lot of it's just very annoying, but they're also very public. So they do put their lives at risk as far as stalkers go. And this woman just paid that price. That's kind of sad. Now, before I get to my soapbox, I just do want a fun thing before my other soapbox thing. Because this one just made me, it's interesting. This was on Your Tango, which is a garbage channel. I mean, it's a garbage. Your Tango makes a lot of money. They always pop up on Google, and it's garbage. The people who write the stuff don't know you don't know if any of it's true, and people who write it aren't professionals, and they just write a bunch of nonsense for the most part. But this one, I don't know if this is true either, but I just wanted to comment. I would give advice on this on my advice channel in case you haven't been there, which is Dear Profiler Pat. I do different things on travel. I do things on things like how should I go to my high school reunion? How do I get over someone or something? So it's an advice channel like Dear Abby, but hopefully better. And if you haven't been there yet, the link is below, and you can always send a help. Dear Profiler Pat, what should I do about some life issue? So this person, I'm not going to do it for that, but I just wanted to comment because I think this is a crime, and I find it funny it's not put out as a crime. And anybody who understands the McCann case will see what I'm saying. Daily habit that makes her feel she can no longer trust him. So I cannot believe the conversation I had to have with my husband about not leaving a literal baby home alone. A literal baby. Okay. First of all, what the heck is a literal baby? Not a fake baby, a literal baby. Okay. So anyway, she learned that her husband wasn't to be trusted when it came to their 15-month-old son. What's worse, she found out about her husband's reckless daily habit from someone else. He was keeping it a secret. A mom found out her husband leaves their 50-month-old baby at home alone while he goes on daily runs. So supposedly, he rationalized what he was doing was fine. He didn't think it was a big deal because he claims he stays within a quarter mile of our house, and he claims he leaves the baby in his crib sleeping. I found it from someone else telling me he does this. He claims the reason he never told me is because he knew I wouldn't be happy about that, and he's been doing this for months. Now she's pregnant with a second child. She goes, I don't know if I want to raise them with my husband because I don't know if I trust him. What should I do? Yeah, she says at home they have a she says they have a jogging stroller, which he could have taken, right? A treadmill, a stationary bike, and a full gym setup. And so he had lots of choices, but he chose to leave the baby home alone. While this man didn't technically do anything illegal. Yes, he did. Come on, Your Tango. Of course he did. That's called child neglect. He left a baby at home without an adult present. He should be arrested for that crap. But since the man technically didn't do anything illegal, he showed some poor judgment. Really? Okay, as the UK's National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children pointed out, there's no magical legal age a child can reach that means they're allowed to be left at home. I guess the McCanns are off the hook. Okay, lady, your husband, first of all, left your baby, abandoned your baby. That's total child neglect. He did something he didn't even need to do. We weren't talking an emergency situation. As you point out, he had lots of other choices, but he did it anyway. And if he does that, how do you know he's just not running down the street to have sex with the lady on the corner? I'd say get away from that guy. Take your children and run, because this guy's unsafe. And not just because he makes poor decisions, but because he's a liar. And God knows what else there is truth about the story, if the story is even true. Now, of course, the problem she's going to run into is that she's going to have to deal with him having the custody battles. And that's where, as I've always point out, you want to make sure you have a keeper before you have kids with him, because if you end up with this jerk, who might be a psychopath, who knows, now you got to leave your kids with him when the court says you got to share your kids with this guy that you don't even trust. What a mess. But I don't know if the story's true, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Yeah, red flag, you think? Yeah, that's only part of what that didn't mean. Yeah, again, your tango. Don't waste your time going there. It does take two to tango. You don't need to tango with them. It's the worst. They're just awful. They're garbage. I mean, she really is. She needs to get a babysitter or stay home. Well, now since she doesn't trust him, yeah, you can't leave your kid with your husband. Yeah. So it's a mess. If that's true, you could be hit by a car and then yeah, baby will be there. Thank you, Lady Jane. I loved your profile. I've seen all your videos. That's nice. I appreciate that. I always hope they're useful to people. But anyway, okay. So let's see. What time am I on? Okay, I've been out here for. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about before I go to any soapboxy thing. This is just an interesting one. I just like to point out some interesting things. This is amazing. It kind of leads into the issue of medical people and psychiatry. But anyway, Anissa Maroof, 48 of Potomac, Maryland, pled guilty to a federal charge of distributing and dispensing controlled substances. According to the guilty plea, between January 2019 and June 2022, Maroof knowingly caused the distributing and dispensing of alprazolam, amphetamine, dextroamphetamine, and buprenorphine. She committed the act with knowledge that distributing and dispensing the controlled substances were outside the scope of professional practice and not for a legitimate medical purpose. This is where it gets amazing. Maroof, a physician who was board certified in addiction psychiatry, addiction psychiatry. She was a psychiatrist to addicts. And she operated a medical practice in Bethesda, Maryland. She also had a Drug Enforcement Administration registration number that authorized her to prescribe controlled substances. Apparently, though, she provided patients from West Virginia with prescriptions for controlled substances, all of these things that addicts like, combinations of them without even warning them of the risks. She also prescribed controlled substances to patients even after they indicated they were selling their excess supply of controlled substances through illicit channels. Oh my God. She regularly provided the controlled substances without providing them any therapeutic services. On numerous occasions, she called in prescriptions to local pharmacies without first even seeing the patient, and then directed the patient to leave cash under her office door in exchange for writing their prescriptions. She's a drug dealer. The woman is a drug dealer. She is supposedly a psychiatrist for people with addiction, and she's just their drug dealer. Unbelievable. She faces a maximum of 20 years in prison, and I hope she spends all 20 years in prison. She's a scumbagging, lying drug dealer, and she was supposed to be a professional, and people trusted her until they found out she was a better drug dealer than a psychiatrist. I mean, really, unbelievable. Oh my God, just shocking. I mean, that's just a really weird case, I tell you. And here I just want to point this one out. This one annoyed me just because an elderly Florida woman faces prison time after collecting money from her father's survivor benefits. My issue with this is not the fact she's a crook. She took money from 2008 to 2023 on her dead father, and she got over $300,000, and so she's up for a prison sentence on that. But I'm really bugged by the fact that she's 71 years old and she's elderly. It's like, would you stop calling people in their 70s elderly, please? Because I'm turning 70 in July, and I don't consider myself elderly. I just don't, I still function. So it's so annoying. Anyway, okay. Now, okay, so if you want to get out of here right now, you can. I'm just going to do my small soapbox. I don't know how small it is, but I did this show on which is coming up this weekend, which I'm sure is going to bring nothing but hell to me. So this is Peter Madsen, who killed, brutally raped, sexually assaulted, and tortured and murdered Kim Wall on his little submarine in Denmark. And he's in prison for life. There's no question he did it. The whole show is a mixture of, it's about how there's a wonderful documentary called Into the Deep on Netflix, which I recommend everybody watch. And it shows they started filming Peter Madsen and wonderful projects he was doing in rocketry and submarines. And he's this entrepreneur, and everybody loved him, blah, blah, blah. And they were doing this documentary when he, in the middle of the documentary, decided to bring Kim Wall, a journalist, onto his submarine and assault and murder her and cut up her body and throw it in places. And then everybody there, you see it, they're shocked because this is happening right. It's almost like a reality show. It's happening right then. And they're like, what the heck? How could this be? We know Peter, he couldn't do such a thing, but he did do such a thing. So then you start seeing that these cracks, as time goes on, you start seeing that there were indications that this guy, in my opinion, 100% is a psychopath. Because I just don't, he had just like creepy, sorry, a gypsy's boyfriend. He had fantasies of raping and murdering women. That is not an autistic person. Nick, go to John. It's not an autistic person who thinks that way. That is a psychopathic person thinks that way. So you have the same thing. Peter Madsen, he was watching all these movies, films, and maybe snuff films, or at least fake snuff films, about women being tortured and murdered. That was a thing. He was excited about that. He had a real fetish for that stuff. And so he finally took an opportunity to do exactly what he wanted to do. To me, that is a sign of psychopathy, because there is zero empathy for your victim. And one of the number one things, which I think people just cannot seem to understand, is that when you have zero empathy and zero remorse, I think those are two of the major issues of psychopathy. Zero empathy and zero remorse, because a person who has not reached that level, let me say there's this narcissistic continuum, in my opinion. And we're all somewhere on there, and some are more narcissistic than others, but they still have some level of empathy, some level of remorse for things, at least somewhere along the way. Then when they get to the very end, the psychopathic end, they lack those completely. Everybody's either useful or in the way. That's how you know they're a psychopath. It's not something that, and it's not something, this concept that you have psychopathic traits for a day is ludicrous. So I get into, during the show, Dr. Das starts, I'd seen another show where Dr. Das was saying Dr. Grande was completely wrong calling Chris Watts a psychopath. And then he gives this really ridiculous claims. And so the show has a good part to do with Dr. Das's claims about that Chris Watts is not a psychopath, and Dr. Grande is completely wrong and has no right to even claim that. And then I bring in Peter Madsen as part of the understanding of this, that here we have a guy, because at some point Dr. Das says, one point he says that a psychopath can have a career and all these, he could do well in life. And then when it gets to Chris Watts, he goes, he can't be a psychopath because he has a career and has done well in life. Okay, you just said two contradictory things. And I want to point this out right now. Just because a person has a career, a house, a family, doesn't make him not a psychopath. There are psychopaths who are not violent. They can be even famous people. They can be actors. They can be politicians. They can be religious people. They can be heroes. I remember, what was it? The American Sniper dude. He was like this American hero for sniping all these people. I'm like, that dude's a psychopath. I'm like, oh my God, he's a good sniper. Probably because he didn't have any empathy, So I'm like, how are you making this guy? I mean, he did his job. And sometimes a psychopath will do a job well because the lack of empathy actually helps them in that job. So just because you have a lack of empathy and no remorse doesn't mean you can't do something well. So there are psychopaths who have careers, and in those careers, sometimes they do the job well because they want to be viewed as being capable They want to get their paycheck. Now there's different levels of psychopaths. There are psychopaths who are uneducated, poorly educated, come from really bad backgrounds, and therefore their failures in life, the parents are failures, their failures, or maybe they just never did well in any of those things. So they lose their jobs. They go live with their cousin. They're a mess. They may be low life criminals. They may turn into serial killers. Who knows? They just may be a pain in the ass. But there's also psychopaths who do very well in life. Colonel Russell Williams is a serial killer from Canada. He was a colonel in the Air Force, very well respected, until the day they said, oh my God, he's our serial killer. They're absolutely stunned. They couldn't believe it. And you have Rex Herman, the theoretical Long Island serial killer. I mean, he was an architect and had a house and creepy kind of lifestyle with his family, but okay. But he still did have that. There's a number of serial killers who actually have stable lives. There are serial killers who are drifters. There are serial killers of all kinds, but they're all psychopaths. You just don't go and continually murder people and not be a psychopath. So when people go, that's like, get out of here. And the next problem I have is that the family annihilator thing, that there's this weird concept these days. And I was looking back on my Andrea Yates thing, and I was saying, the interesting thing that happens is that when women kill their children, except for Susan Smith, nobody likes Susan Smith, so she's bad. And Casey Anthony, well, she got off, but they don't like her either. But outside of those, a lot of times when women kill their children, as that woman in New Zealand that killed a bunch of her babies, and now she's free and got millions because the governor decided that she didn't really do it, which is nonsense. You've got Lindsay Clancy up in Massachusetts who killed her 3 little girls. And people are going, oh, she just had postpartum depression. That's what happened there. Andrea Yates had postpartum depression. And so for a while there was like the women were given excuses to get off. And what was being done was the men who they were with were being accused of giving them a bad lifestyle. Like Rusty Yates was horrible. He made his wife have babies and he didn't give her a big enough house. Therefore, it's Rusty's fault. And with Lindsay Clancy, God knows what they're going to do to her husband, say it's his fault. So it was weird. It's like, so it turns out that at one point in time, they seem to blame the men for giving the women who were killing their kids the rap. In other words, the husband made her do it type of thing. And the men who were doing bad things, killing their families, they were considered psychopaths. Now things have switched. For some reason, there's all these lovers of Chris Watts and Scott Peterson and Jeremy Bamber and a whole bunch of others. Now they're saying the bitch made him do it. So if it wasn't for Lacey, first of all, of course, he didn't do it, right? Scott Peterson didn't do it, but if he did do it, it's probably Lacey's fault. Chris Watts, it's definitely Shanann's fault. His wife just drove him to it. And his girlfriend, Nicole, she definitely, she was this temptress. So Chris Watts is this little innocent boy in the middle of these 2 horrible women that made him do it. And it sickens me. It sickens me. Because these men, just like these women who kill their families, cold-bloodedly plan to murder their families because they are no longer useful and they're in the way. At some point, when they married, they thought they're getting, sex all the time. They didn't have to go look for sex anymore. They had somebody at home to give them sex, maybe take care of the house, help them out, help them make decisions, all the things that a wife might be good at. Then they're happy to get that. And then after a while, they realize that they don't have the freedom they want to have, that now they have responsibilities as a husband and a father, and their money goes to taking care of them as opposed to going out and partying. Jeffrey McDonald, same thing. He was tired of his family. Every one of them is tired of their family. And I want to point out Chris Watts, he's a great example. Where's Chris Watts? No, that's what's his face? Chris Watts. Let me tell you the story of Chris Watts. He's another person. Well, I don't know if he's gotten as much sympathy as the rest of them at this point. I'm sorry, not Chris Watts, Chris Coleman. Sorry, Chris Coleman. Chris Coleman. Why did he murder his family? Chris Coleman, this is one I'm just pulling over Reddit. Chris Coleman murdered his family to keep his job and be with his mistress. Okay, so he was the head of security for Joyce Mayer, the famous evangelist. He had a pretty cushiony job that also fed his ego. He started getting threatening emails in the fall of 2008, as did Joyce and some of her family. He also received a threatening letter in his home mailbox. In May of 2009, he called the police and asked them to check on his wife, 31-year-old Sherry Coleman, and their sons, 11-year-old Garrett and 9-year-old Gavin. He was at the gym, and she wasn't answering the phone, and he was on his way back. The cops arrived and found the basement window open. Upon entering, they saw the words like "punished" sprayed on the walls, and they found Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin strangled to death in their beds. After investigating, it was discovered the threatening emails had come from Chris Coleman's laptop. And the autopsy concluded they were murdered before Chris had left for the gym. Chris had murdered them and spray painted the walls. They also learned he took the long way home from the gym. Sherry had told her friends and family their marriage was on the rocks. He treated her terribly, and if something happened to her, Chris did it. And I want to point out here, this guy took his boys to baseball games. He was considered by the outside world a perfectly fine fella. So from the outside, anybody can look good because a lot of people aren't out in public having big arguments. They don't see what kind of emotional abuse is in the home. They don't see what's going on. Psychopaths can be very good about presenting themselves in public as always the nice person and always the victim. But at home, they're much more manipulative and cold-blooded than people realize. So Chris Coleman was that kind of person. And he decided, he started having, they also discovered that he'd been having an affair with his wife's best friend and wanted to be with her, but he couldn't keep his good job with the Christian ministry if he left his wife and children for another woman. So he started setting the stage by sending the threatening emails. I thought he also wanted to run off with a stripper. I can't remember the story. It's been a while. He was found guilty of murdering them, despite denying it and his defense attorneys claiming his laptop was hacked. They should have given him the death penalty, but the judge gave him life without parole. Now, here's another interesting thing, which goes to the Chris Watts thing. Another tidbit I'd like to add here is that his parents throughout it all not only defended him, but claimed he was innocent, but claimed Sherry was at fault if he was cheating. Something along the lines of she must not have been doing her duty. Same thing. Shanann was just not a good wife. She was pressuring Chris Watts into in things he wasn't unhappy. He was unhappy. And then the claim is, and this is from Chris, so this is disgusting to me. So Chris claims that after they woke up and they had sex and then they started talking and she told him that the marriage was over and he was not going to see his kids again. And that's why he strangled her. First of all, this psychopath is telling you that. If you believe that, you're a fool. You're a fool. With that, he says that is not true unless he's got a recording of it. He can say, oh, she said this, and it may have zero truth. She may have been sleeping when he strangled her because you have no proof she was even awake, even having a discussion. He was done with her, and he said, this is the time I can get rid of her, and he strangles her to death. So the nonsense stuff that he's trying to make her, the bitch made me do it thing, first of all, there's no way, in this world today, there's no way he would never see his children again. That's garbage. But he would have to pay child support. And Nicole was actually apparently trying to get him to stay in the area so he could see his kids. When he left, she thought he was going to leave Shanann because their marriage was crap. So you can call her whatever you want to call her. She could be narcissistic, but there's no evidence she's psychopathic. So please do not say either one of them. Do not accuse people of being psychopathic who aren't murdering their children. Just because she's having an affair with him when she thinks he's leaving his wife, and he's probably telling her that, she thinks, oh, I've seen too many women get caught with that. Well, they aren't getting along, and we get along beautifully. So he's just had a bad marriage, and they think they're going to save this guy from this bad marriage. So she thought she's doing that. I'm not saying I have to like her as a person. I don't know her. She can have her issues. But she did not help kill those children. So those disgusting channels that actually say she did, they're despicable. And to blame her for his choice to murder his wife and children, she had no idea who was going to do that. How dare you even put that on her or put it on Shanann? People get divorced all the time. They don't expect to get murdered and have their children murdered by the person they married. So that's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. And I'm fed up, sick with it. Chris Watts, he wasn't a perfect man all the way through. So if they start looking into his lifestyle, didn't have a girlfriend when he was in high school. Why not? That dude is good looking. Just want to say, that's a good looking man. Why didn't he have a girlfriend? Was it his off-putting behavior. He hooked up with Shanann when she went through an abusive situation. I guess she had lupus. He hooked up with her and started caring for her. Maybe he thought this was a way he could get a woman and control her. But maybe it didn't work out in the long run. And as she got healthier, she wasn't into whatever he was doing. His parents hated her from the beginning. His mother was a nasty piece of work. I think he fell from that narcissistic tree. I think his parents interfered with the marriage and made life miserable, and maybe gave him a personality disorder along with it. And here's the thing I want to read to you just before I go off and the soapbox from the FBI thing. Hold on. All right. The FBI did this long. Now, again, I want to point out, when you see interviews with people and you say, oh, well, they feel remorse now. Again, they have been working with defense attorneys. And when they get interviewed, they're being told what to say by the defense attorneys. That's what defense attorneys do. They're trying to get everything pulled down to, he didn't know what he was doing. You had that bad hair day that Dr. Das thinks he had. He was a great guy till that moment, and the two women made him do it. So he just lost his brains and decided he had to murder his own little children to get out of the wife issue. This guy, on the one part where I say it's a very long thing, you can't believe most of what he says because I think he's a pathological liar like all psychopaths are. But the thing that, did he plan this or not plan it? All right. Now, after he murdered Shanann, he threw her cell phone and Apple Watch on the couch. If he had planned it, he would have taken her items out to the oil tank with him. No, because it also says here he took Shanann's wedding ring and put it on the counter so it looked like she didn't want to fix their marriage and wanted a divorce. He had enough thinking right there to go, okay, now that I've killed her, I'm going to do this. He threw the therapy book away in the trash so it looked like she believed nothing would work in their marriage. So he was trying to say she ran off. So this guy's calculating. Now, there's an interesting deception detective does a really good thing on Chris Watts. And he talks about the difference between types of types of murderers thinking and psychopath thinking. And psychopath thinking, one bold type of psychopaths and the very careful ones. And this is what Watts is. He always presents himself as a victim, as a sweet guy, as a little nice boy. He's always presenting himself that way. I'm the victim. So that you have trouble believing that he could do something like this, unless he's had some psychotic attack, right? So anyway, after he does this, I just want to point this one thing out here. All right, where's the thing with the children? Okay. Let me find. Hold on, that's the end of it. Okay, let me go back here. Hold on a second. All right. There's a section where he's talking about the little girls and what he's done, what he did with the little girls. Sorry, there's 31 pages here. I'm trying to find the page that had this on it. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. After he kills his wife, okay, let's see. All right. After Shanann was dead, Bella walked into the bedroom holding her blanket and asked what was wrong with Mommy. He believed Bella might have woken up by the noise. He told Bella, Mommy don't feel good. She thought she was sleeping. He wrapped her, Shanann, face down on the bed sheet, and then he tried to carry her down the stairs, lost his grip, and ended up having to drag her down the stairs. Bella watched him drag Shanann down the stairs and began to cry and say, what's wrong with Mommy? He told her Mommy didn't feel good. Bella's a smart girl, and she knew what was going on. So she followed him down the stairs. He backed his pickup truck in the driveway and put Shanann in the back seat. When he returned inside, Celeste was in her room and starting to get out of bed. He believed the noise of Shanann's feet hitting the stairs as he dragged her down may have woken Celeste. Bella and Celeste were light sleepers. Bella and Celeste were walking around the house. Every time he sees Bella and Celeste, he doesn't understand how it all could have happened. Maybe because you murdered your wife and were planning to murder your kids too, because you want them all gone. I don't think you murdered them because they knew what happened to their mommy. I think, again, understand this. The entire story about how this went down with little girls is his statement. All we know is that his wife was strangled and his little girls were strangled and suffocated, and they were put in those tanks, and his wife was buried. That's all we know. We do not know one thing. This is possibly all completely made up. So it looks like he's didn't mean to kill the girls, which, they saw him. I don't know why he's saying this, but it's not necessarily true. So don't believe all of this stuff. They could have been killed right in their beds. You just don't know. But then it goes back. Oh, he doesn't know. Being a dad was the best part of his life, and he took it all away. He's trying to play. Oh, I know I did the bad thing. I'm so sorry. I did a bad thing. That's where he tries to get out of looking like a psychopath. But he has some remorse, but we don't know that he actually does. When the prosecutor said Bella bit her tongue repeatedly, he wanted to bang his head up against the wall. Sure. Okay, then it says he put his lunchbox in the truck and he put Bella and Celeste in the back of the truck. And Bella saying, "Is Mommy okay?" And he told them both Mommy would be fine. And I think he also, I think the dog was locked up during this. I'm trying to remember if this is the case. A dog was locked up, so how convenient. Okay. And then he goes on, blah, blah, blah. He has tried to picture the long ride out to the oil site and wondered if he could have saved the girl's life. Well, maybe by not killing them. Well, of course you could save their lives. You could have just gone in and said, look, I got in an argument with my wife and I accidentally killed her. You could try that. Then you could go for the heat of the moment bull crap. You might have gotten 20 years, maybe 10, maybe see your kids again. But you thought it was better to kill them so that you could get away with it all because you want to go off with your mistress. So eventually, she finally says he kills one of the girls. I'm not going to go through all of it. He kills one of the girls, and the next girl has to watch him supposedly kill his daughter next to the other one. Doesn't know how long it took her to strangle her. Okay, that was nice. And then when the other one went for the other one, she said, "Daddy, no." And it was the last word she ever spoke, but he went right ahead and murdered her. And then he dumped them in the oil tanks and all that stuff. Then he tried to go on with his life. I'm sorry, if you can listen to this sickening, I don't even know that this is true. This is all his story. He may have killed them all at home. None of this may happen. But the fact that he actually tells you that he said, "Daddy, no," and he killed her anyway. Either he's gloating over how he still did this anyway, or he's just cold-blooded in general that he can tell the story of killing his kids as, I just don't know what happened. Just like he had so much time, according to him, to think things through and not do them. He had his children begging him. And we don't know if his wife was begging him too. We don't know any of this stuff. That is one cold-blooded psychopath. And for anybody to say this guy he's a regular, he was a nice guy, but these two women drove him to killing his wife and pregnant wife and his children, offends me. It offends me. I don't, the support of child killers. And of course people say, well, I'm not supporting him. I'm not saying he didn't do it. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be in prison, but he's not a psychopath. Get out of here. Now, what I keep hearing is that, but the Psychiatric Association would not label him a psychopath. I don't give a crap. The Psychiatric Association, as I point out in the video, constantly changes their mind. They go, okay, we're not going to use psychopathy anymore. We're going to use sociopathy. Oh, not going to use that anymore. We're going to use whatever it is, the new defiant thing, or antisocial personality disorder. We're going to use that now because it doesn't stigmatize as much. And we don't want to tell people that say they're psychopaths because we think we should be able to work with people. We don't call them a psychopath because then you can't actually help them. So we're not going to call them that. We're going to call them something lesser because we want to believe that they can be rehabilitated, which they can't be. And all this this nonsense coming out of the Psychiatric Association, which is, in my opinion, a massive cult, because they have developed such a bunch of wordy crap on every single. They've got so many different. If you look at the DSM-5, They have so many different things you can be. They'll just pick out a whole bunch of different things, and then they'll stuff them together and say, if you have these 5 things, you have arachnophobia. If you have this, you have that. They make up a ton of crap. They're not logical. They're not down to earth. They're a whole bunch of airy-fairy nonsense, which is so exaggerated because it keeps them in business, because it makes them look like they know more than anybody in this world. And unless you are a licensed psychiatrist, you can't possibly diagnose anybody. You have to be able to go through all these things, and you got to check all these little boxes, and then your experience has to. And of course, if you go to any trial, the prosecution will present its psychiatrist that says the guy's a psychopath, and the defense will present its psychiatrist who will say he's not a psychopath. So they're always disagreeing anyway, just like many experts. So the concept that, oh, this is the absolutely huge thing, that if you don't agree with everything the Psychiatric Association says in 2025, even though they just changed everything from 2024 and 2023, they keep changing all the terminology and all the requirements to be this or that. Suddenly, you're being ridiculous, that obviously you should be following what the Psychiatric Association says. Well, it's the same thing as the FBI. The FBI has come up with all kinds of nonsense about serial killers and stuff. They make up stuff. And then if you don't go along with the program, suddenly you're just, oh, you can't be a real profiler because you don't believe what everything the FBI says. As if the FBI has some kind of absolute truth about anything. And if you read FBI stuff, you'll see it changes all the time. The doctors, they change their views all the time. They misdiagnose. They give people medications, and they find out later on those medications cause this kind of horrible thing. There's all kinds of things that medical association will change. Oh, by the way, don't do that anymore. Don't do that surgery anymore. Don't do that. They're not perfect. They're a group of people who have great power, who make rules and stuff like that. That doesn't make them always correct. I go to logic. I like to use logic as more of an indicator of things. When you have studied reasonable amount, I'm not saying you shouldn't study at all. You studied psychology, studied criminal minds, and I pointed out in some of the wonderful books like Stenton Salmanow has put out, and you've been around long enough to see how the behaviors of people that put them in a particular category. And what, I don't know what the desire is. I mean, calling a person who murders their wife and children a psychopath, people are taking it as some horrible offense. I'm sorry, I don't quite understand that. Now I can understand where when you suddenly say, for example, you call Shanann a psychopath or something. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. You don't have any proof of that. She can kill anybody. You might not like her personality, or the same thing for Nicole. Or, there's people out there in the world who are politicians. I hear, oh, that politician's a psychopath. You hear that all the time. Maybe you're just tossing that out there. Maybe they're not. But they could be. They could be. But the point being is, when it comes down to that, I can go for a better argument. But it comes down to a guy who murders his wife and children cold-bloodedly like that, and you think it's offensive to call him a psychopath, or you're completely wrong. I'm sorry. I just don't understand it. I think it's just nonsense. And recently, I had somebody come in, one of my patrons, who is no longer a patron because I blocked her. She also came onto the YouTube channel, and she said the same thing. She went into huge diatribes, how she knows, she understands this stuff, and I do not. And she goes on and on about how he's not a psychopath because of, and she puts all this garbage in. Turns out, when I put pressure on, I said, who are you? And where do you get your expertise from? Turns out she's a student. She's a student. She has never really worked in the field. She's a student. And yet she's got arrogance, maybe a narcissistic personality disorder, that says because she's studying this stuff, that suddenly she's this brilliant psychiatrist, and she follows everything the psychiatric world says. And therefore, anybody who disagrees with her viewpoint as a student about what the psychiatric world says is suddenly a charlatan. So she says Dr. Grande is completely wrong because he thinks Watts is a psychopath. And of course, that means clearly I'm completely wrong. Now, you can disagree with me that he's a psychopath. I'm not saying you can't disagree. But I'm going to say I am tired of people throwing out all this psychological mumbo jumbo from that is so convoluted. And when people try to say this is why he's not a psychopath, to me, they've never proven their point at all. Psychopaths can have careers. They can appear to be decent people, but that doesn't mean they're not psychopathic. And when they reach a point where people are so not useful to them anymore and are in their way that they will go to the level of murdering them, that's a psychopath. And I will stand by that, and I will not back down from that. And I will not blame all the people around them because they didn't make their lives as happy as they should have. So I just find that absolutely despicable. I was married for 25 years. If my ex-husband killed me, there are people who might say that I drove him to it. Maybe they liked him better than me. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they're like, well, she seems controlling to me, and he seemed kind of very quiet. Well, there was truth to that. But that was because a lot of times I had to make the decisions. He was a good father, but we did not do well as a couple in the long run. 25 years, and still a good father, but nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. So if I killed him, should we accuse him of being the reason that he's dead? Should we blame that victim? Well, Pat Brown just had it. She just had enough of him. He was disabuse and bad abuse or whatever. And so she killed him. So we're standing behind her, or vice versa. He kills me, and you're like, well, that woman was a bitch, you know. So no wonder he killed her. She drove him to it. Get out of here. Because never once when I was going through the divorce process and was very angry and very upset, and I do own weapons, did I ever once consider going and shooting him or stabbing him to death? Never once. So I've always said, just like Stanton Salmon, there is no such thing. What's his book? Let me see if I pull his book up here. There's no such thing as out of character crime. That's why you know a person's a psychopath, because you just don't do things that aren't in your character. And if you're willing to brutally murder your own children, you're a psychopath. And I do think Andrea Yates was one too. Watch my video on that. She may have had her moments, but a lot of times I think it was attention seeking. She tried to commit suicide so many times. It's like she never knew how to do it right. Everybody can, if they're going to kill themselves, they can do it. But a lot of times it's just an attention getter. Sometimes it's a cry for help, but sometimes it's an attention getter. It's a manipulation method. And so just because you go to a therapist, by the way, I know a lot of people who are highly narcissistic who love going to therapy because I love manipulating the therapist and to tell everybody, oh, I'm in therapy and it's really helping me and this is what I'm doing now. And they're really not getting any better because they're really not there to get better. They're there to get the adoration of, oh, I'm so open-minded and I'm so willing to look into my own issues that I'm willing to go to a therapist. And I've been doing all my therapy work. You know, sometimes, yes, if you're really going there for the right reasons, that's fine. I'm not saying everybody goes there as a narcissist. I'm just saying that many narcissists do go there. And they play games. And I think a lot of psychiatrists are narcissists too, so they play little games together. So a lot of things aren't as we see them from outside. And if you don't understand how things really work, you can buy into a whole bunch of stuff that to me just drives me nuts. So yes, I did block that person because I'm not going to sit here. People come here who do not know what they're talking about, in my opinion. They can have an opinion, but they're sitting there and going to attack me and say, "Oh, you're basically a terrible profile. You shouldn't be saying these things because I have been studying psychology at college." That I think you have a narcissistic personality disorder if you will attack people to that level, because when you're just a student. And she wouldn't give her. And I said, "Well, who are you? If you're going to give me all these things, tell me who you are." And she dodged it. She wouldn't give me her name. She wouldn't say what college she was going to. She said she worked on a dissertation, but she never said she finished it. She didn't say, she said she worked with domestic violence victims, but she never said in what capacity and how long. So that's a person who's dodging all the questions because they're playing their narcissistic game, which is to prove an expert wrong. That's very popular. Prove an expert wrong. You go after the expert because if you can prove them wrong, that makes you feel good. Now, mind you, you all do that to some extent. You know, there are some things, obviously, I just said I don't like what Lawyer Lee does. Okay. That is an opinion, but I wouldn't go to Lawyer Lee and go into a diatribe on her channel and try to take her down. Dr. Das, I don't agree with him. I think what he's doing saying with Dr. Grandi is completely wrong, which I pointed out. But, and I'm not impressed by him. I'm not. I think his conclusions that Chris Watts is not a psychopath and his contradictory statements on psychopathy are concerning. But I'm another expert, so at least I have some legitimacy to, try to talk on a professional level on these things. We're not all perfect. I agree. I accept that. But I'm just tired of people defending child killers. I'm done with it. I just really am. I'm just done with it. I'm tired of it. So that is my diatribe, and that is my soapbox. I'm tired of people defending brutal child killers as if they somehow, I don't know, just, well, thank you. Darlie Root, Darlie again. I do believe she's guilty. Now, the only thing one could question there is there's people who do not think the evidence proved her guilty. I think they're wrong. I think the evidence did prove her guilty. So if the evidence is true, and I think it is, then Darlie Routier is a psychopath. The only thing I could say is that if for some reason that wasn't actually proven, well, then you could say she's not a psychopath because she didn't commit the crime. But yeah. That is a new, completely agree. I have little patience for psychologists and psychiatrists these days. A lot of them act like right fighters and not logical academics. It's the same thing I've said with the history thing and a profiling thing. When I did Cleopatra, I was dissed because I wasn't a historian and I wasn't an Egyptologist. Yet I did the Discovery Channel, and on that show I got rid of the snake, and then I wrote a book called The Murder of Cleopatra, which you can also see the series here on YouTube, which I did 10-part series. And I got rid of the snake. And every single historian and Egyptologist has gotten rid of the snake. The snake was in every single person's book and every academic's take on Cleopatra. Their history of Cleopatra always included the snake and the suicide with snake. Every single one of them. I got rid of it, and now all of them say there was no snake, but not one of them mentions my name. Why? Because I'm not part of the club. And I'm not allowed to be in the club because I didn't jump through the same hoops they jumped through. And they're in the historian club, or they're in the Egyptology club, and we're the owners of all that understanding and information. And that's what the FBI did too. FBI thinks they own profiling. And when I said that I think serial killer should be 2 killings with a downtime in between, they were saying I was wrong. It was 3. That television lady, that's the words they used. That television lady is wrong. She doesn't know what she's talking about. It's 3, not 2. And after about 10 years, after I said it and kept pushing for it, 10 years later, like, they came out and said, we're going with 2. I'm like, really? But I was wrong all those years. Now you're right, and I don't exist, because I'm not one of the club. Now, to me, I don't care really if you're one, in the club, as long as you're using logic and a good sense of understanding, because there are people who can be absolutely great advice givers. They can be great profilers. They can be great. They can do great statement analysis, and they may not have gone through whatever. People say deception detective. They'll say that with him a lot. They'll say, well, we don't know what his background is. And we actually don't. He says an attorney, but I'll give him credit. I listen to his stuff, and I like what he has to say. I think his stuff is extraordinarily rational, and I agree. There's a couple things I don't agree on, but generally speaking, I agree with a good portion of what he says, and I think he presents it well. So I don't have a problem with that, and I don't need him to go through some hoops. I don't. And a person can become a profiler without going through profiling school, because it doesn't exist except for the program I put together, which no longer exists at Excelsior College, as far as I know anyway. They ruined the program. But I can run into somebody and say, well, that person can really profile well, even though I did have a student once, when I was doing my program at Excelsior College as a professor there. I had a student, and she was phenomenal. She was like 19 years old and was a secretary or something. And I'm like, this girl, she was so logical. She paid attention to the evidence. She was amazing. So I will give her all the credit in the world. But what she wasn't doing was buying a whole bunch of nonsense and then coming after me and telling me I was wrong. That's the part that bothers me. When you just buy into a whole bunch of gobbledygook, that is not proven and does change all the time. So when somebody comes and says, well, you, Pat Brown, you're wrong about serial killers. It has to be 3 kills with time in between because that's what the FBI says. So, you're wrong. You know what you're talking about. And now apparently I do know what I was talking about. And I can be wrong sometimes. I could be just not quite right on something and somebody else could be better at that. I agree with that. But just the way these cult, it's almost like these different, the same thing with doctors. They got almost like a cult of you have to believe whatever that the AMA says. You have to believe in all of it. And they'll have a doctor who'll say, well, don't Google. Well, hey, my son went over to Grok the other day and he got way better information from Grok than he ever got from his doctor. You know what I mean? So it was amazing information. And sometimes the doctor will go to Grok and go, Grok, what do you say? Because he doesn't know everything either. So it's just to have this concept that this one group of people owns the intelligence of something, I just think is ludicrous and really bothers me. But I'm sorry. But again, a guy murders his wife and children as cold-bloodedly as Chris Watts does. I think psychopath is a perfectly reasonable term. And to defend him as not a psychopath, or defend, that doesn't, all his traits aren't psychopathic. As Dr. Doss says, he only had psychopathic traits that day. Get out of here. Oh my God, it just hurts my head. Just have no patience for that nonsense. Listener says, yes, unfortunately, professional fields are super cliquey. It's a shame because everyone can use a fresh perspective sometimes, even if it's not entirely correct or perfect. Yes, and sometimes it's more correct than what's out there, which is why they sometimes will change their viewpoint to the viewpoint they claimed was incorrect. Like, say, Cleopatra. Oh, no, she was murdered. She committed suicide with a snake. She committed suicide with a snake. She committed suicide with a snake. Oh, Pat Brown says she didn't commit suicide with a snake, and she gives good evidence that that's true. Okay. She didn't commit suicide with a snake. But until then, if you dare to say she didn't commit suicide with a snake, you could be trashed into the ground. And I guess when I did the documentary, I proved it well enough that they couldn't actually argue the point. My arguments, the arguments I used, the evidence I used was strong enough that stuff they'd never thought of because they were so enclosed in their clique that they never thought outside of it. They just repeated over and over again, suicide by snake, suicide by snake, suicide by snake for thousands of years. And nobody stopped to think, maybe that's just not true. So this whole concept, though, you somehow nowadays you can't use the word psychopath, even it's not even diagnosis really anymore. And then you have to check these little boxes. And if somebody decides if you don't check the box, what was one of the boxes? Oh, that they kept going on about, trying to remember the one that, this is the one that really, I got a parasitic lifestyle. So a student who is hacking me says, well, you has to, the serial killer has to have a parasitic lifestyle. Since when? I mean, maybe that was thrown in. I can't remember if it was thrown in as one of the Dr. Harris thing on his psychopathy checklist. In other words, you didn't have to have all of them, but it could be one of them. So there are what I call low-level psychopaths who do have a parasitic lifestyle. They end up, staying with their mommy. They end up with, they lose their job, so they have to stay with their friends. They don't pay the rent. They do have a parasitic lifestyle, but not all of them do. Some of them actually work, have careers. So it's not an absolute. So when you say Chris Watts can't be that because he didn't have a parasitic lifestyle, it's like, what the heck? That's your reason for excluding him from being a psychopath? Not the murdering of people and murdering little children who beg him not to do it. That doesn't include him. But just because he kept a job, I don't know. Just craziness. Well, Dr. Grandi is he has a personality. He's found a formula. He worked for many, many years, probably, I forgot, 7 years, 10 years, doing therapy videos, which were all professional therapy videos. And then one day he found out about true crime and he moved over to that because it makes money. And I don't think he does a heavy amount of research. So I don't think he's a criminal profiler. So sometimes I think he gets his evidence wrong or his analysis evidence wrong. but his psychology is not so wrong. And the people that, like Dr. Das, who have the gall to say that guy has no right to even talk about psychology because he's not a psychiatrist. He studied psychology. He has a PhD in counselor education. He works with people who have addictions and stuff like that. He works in mental health. He's a mental health counselor who has a PhD. You don't think he studied stuff? No, is he allowed to prescribe drugs? No, because he's not an MD. But that doesn't mean he doesn't understand psychology. So I give him all the credit. Yes, he has every right to talk about psychology. Let's actually talk about true crime, which is why sometimes I go, hey, Dr. Grande, that is completely wrong. But he does have a formula. He does have a funny, dry sense of humor. And people like him because they learn something, but it's short and sweet. And he makes big bucks, so he does. He's successful. He's more successful than Dr. Das. Deception Detective is pretty polished. He makes way more money than me. But I'm like, okay, he has a methodology that, first of all, he does a statement analysis is more popular with people than what I do. That's just a fact. People love statement analysis. They love catching people on lies. That's a huge moneymaker. And he does it well. So since he does it well, what do I have to complain about? That he makes more money than me because he's chosen a different subject matter? Well, that's my fault. I mean, I choose not to do statement analysis, except for here and there in when I do case analysis. I do talk about statement analysis, which I will talk about when I do this little segment on the missing kids in Nova Scotia. I will do statement analysis, but I do small statement analysis, and he goes through interview after interview after interview, and I don't have the patience for it. It's just not me. But I don't begrudge him because he's successful in what he does, because he does it well. And I don't begrudge Dr. Grande, although I don't always agree with him and sometimes go, no. Yeah, but I will never say he has no right to talk about psychology because he earned his degree in mental health. Get out of here, Dr. Das. That pisses me off. And he's got this big beef with him over and over again because he has a goal to, because they diagnose on the internet. He diagnosed, even though Dr. Grande says, I don't diagnose. I'm just saying, it looks, Chris Watts appears to be a psychopath. And Dr. Das says, how dare you diagnose on the internet? He's not a psychopath. Well, Dr. Das, you never saw Chris Watts either. So you're the supposedly forensic psychologist and you're diagnosing without hardly knowing a thing. So you're in violation of you're actually in violation of what you're supposed to do. So, yeah, that world. Well, yeah, people like, I don't know, everybody has their own taste. I'll say this because you're saying you find Dr. Grande arrogant. I find Dr. Das extremely arrogant, and I don't like his sense of humor. Dr. Grande, I think he's smug, a bit smug and all that stuff, but he's successful. So yeah, there are a lot of people can't stand me. They just say I can't listen to that woman. I think I don't like her sense of humor. They think it's inappropriate when I talk about, make a joke in the middle of talking about homicide. There are people who don't like my soapboxes. There are people who just don't like me. And so we can't please everybody. And I don't even try now. I have my style. I feel this is the way I am. I prefer to do this and try to change my style to be somebody I'm not. And everybody's got their own style. And I'm okay with that. I'd say Lawyer Lee, I didn't have a problem with her style at all. I like her style. Actually, I like Lawyer Lee's style, which was why I promoted her during the Delphi thing, even though I think that probably, I'm okay with the found guilty plea. But I'm not happy with what I see her doing with this conspiracy stuff on these two other cases. It really bothers me because I'm wondering why she's doing that, why she's promoting that and encouraging stuff that she should know is unlikely to be true. Except she's playing the defense lawyer now, and she's going to take the defense side. But there's too many people who get sucked into this kind of conspiracy stuff. I don't think she should be encouraging it if you're going to be a logical and rational person. So I'm not happy with what I see, but I don't have a problem with her style of presentation. I found that fairly pleasant. So, yeah. To each their own, exactly. Oh, really? The cool and humorous people are with me? Well, that's always nice. Yeah. I say it's just one of those things. The same thing when you write a book, somebody says, "Oh my God, that's the best book I've ever written." Another person's going, "This is trash." It's like, oh, well, and, and I'm just not one to change my style. I don't, I can't play that. Some people do, they figure out exactly what style they need to do to make the money, and they do that. Just not me. I don't have the energy, to tell you the truth. I mean, I don't. It's like, at this point in my life, I'm like, I do what I can do, and that's what I do. So anyway, I'm going to go. I think I have a little time here. I'm going to do that little separate section that I want to do on the missing kids in Nova Scotia. And then I'll put that up. So you'll be able to see that today. And this will, of course, come out next week for the people who aren't here in the chat room. So I wouldn't be here if it was mainstream. Well, it's all I always hope is that, I can do I can survive. I can survive. People don't understand how hard it is to survive on YouTube, to make enough money to even be able to do YouTube, because it is a full-time job. People think it's a lot easier than it is. It's not easy. The research, the preparation, the stress of it it's very difficult. Good, but difficult. And I'm just trying to make enough to survive. I don't expect I'll ever, make the big bucks like these other people, and bully for them. I just know that my style and my methodology and my energy and I'm just not going to go there. It's not going to be me. So I'm just trying to survive enough so that I can keep doing the channel, and because some people do like my channel, so I want to keep doing it. So, so bye everybody. Thank you for being here again. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And before I leave, I just want to say, Chris Watts is a psychopath. I'll see you next time. Bye.